Hello everyone, welcome back to our panel. This is going to be mods, a way into games. So it's all about using mods as an avenue to maybe learn a little bit something more about games and the things that we can do in them. And so joining me, I have Scott Reismanis, in person, in the flesh. And then up on the screen, we're going to have two digital friends. What? They'll be here shortly. It's a long way to travel, so... There we are, hey! We've got Caleb West.
Hey guys, hello.
And Taliesin Charles-Lewis. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did. Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello. So, I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves, starting with our flesh boy, Scott. Tell us about yourself and what it is that you do.
I think Flesh Boy's the first time I've heard that, so there you go. Hey everyone, it's fantastic to be here. I'm Scott Reismanis, and I must admit I feel a bit like an imposter because I'm not a composer or actually have done any real game design and development. But I did found a website called moddb.com that some of you might be familiar with 20 years ago now, and still very busy in this space, running mod.io, which is a user-generated content platform for games to use to integrate. And I have a great appreciation for all the elements that go into creating a fantastic gaming experience, and having seen and been on the journey with so many mod teams and mod creators that have found their way into the games industry and created really successful projects. So I'm looking forward to chatting about that with you all today.
Awesome. And Caleb, could you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Caleb. Some may know me as CW3D. I have been in the modding scene for about 5 or so years now, mainly as a voice actor, sound designer. I also do a bit of, have been doing a bit of music on the side as well, and have expanded more doing that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And Tal.
Hi, my name is Tal. Like Caleb, I've been in the modding scene for about 5 or 6 years, mostly doing level design and sound design for different video games. I've sort of been branching into other fields of work like game testing, but that's still something I'm working with at the moment.
Awesome. So I'll remind everyone watching both in person and on live stream that you can pop your questions into Slido. They come right up on my little tablet here, and I can have a look at all of them. So please ask whatever questions you want to know, because we want you to get the most out of these sessions. But I'm going to kick us off by asking, did you have any experience in game making outside of modding before you started modding, or was modding kind of like you're in? Anyone can jump in.
I think I'll start with that. For me, modding was generally my gateway into game development as a whole. I started off messing around in the Source engine, like picking apart and looking at textures for games like Half-Life 2 and Team Fortress 2, and from there I started making my own levels in the Hammer editor. I then joined up with a couple of mod teams, one of them being the now defunct Keep Away From Fire, which was doing a Half-Life 2 Episode 3 fan project. From there, I then worked with Caleb with Raising the Bar Redux. I've also been doing some quality assurance work for a couple of indie developers, namely Running with Scissors, the people who make the Postal series. And I also did a bit of sound design for a Fallout 4 mod when I first started out, but I've since departed from the team from there.
Caleb, what about you? Was mods your first way in?
Yeah, it was very like simple mods at the start. It was more like it was me being curious on how to do like replacement mods for Half-Life. So I was looking into like how people were doing that, and it was generally very high quality stuff, and I'm like, I want to do the same thing sort of stuff. So it was sound related stuff. It could have just been like music or something like that. And then I kind of moved forward into getting other tools to extract like textures from Half-Life 2's files, and seeing like how that all works, like like how the model detects those texture files and whatnot. So I was able to easily replace textures and upload my replacements up onto a site where people can download them. And it moved on from there when I started searching through the ModDB pages for Half-Life 2 mods, and just finding mods that I was interested in, seeing if people needed, because I was doing voice work as well, seeing if people wanted like voice work for their project or anything else. And sometimes I'd get onto the project and end up doing a bit more than I had joined up for. So I might then do like sound design for them or a bit of music for them.
Scott, do you mod yourself, or you're just the king of the websites?
Takes a few seconds. Yeah, so I certainly don't. So it's a bit hard for me to answer that question, but I can actually share some anecdotes of some people whose journey I've worked very closely with and have had modding become a journey into the industry. So one of the ones that I really like is Alex Quick. He founded Killing Floor and created that for Unreal Tournament, forever ago now, and made that project, and then it got picked up by Tripwire, and he moved into there. So that got him into the gaming industry through them, and then he's continued to find success doing that, where he'll then dabbled in Depth, and then he made Maneater, and he's just recently created, the name escapes me, but it's been a really big hit. And so modding for him was a really big journey, and I worked with him closely on a few of those projects and provided advice. So I could talk about other people's stories, but not my own, because I don't actually create gaming content.
What drew you to set up these sites and kind of invest in it and give these people a platform?
For me, and probably the reason why I think modding is such a fantastic pathway into the gaming industry is because it's a hotbed of creativity. When you start your career, you're going to have a boss, you're going to have deadlines, you're going to have sort of budgets that you've got to stick within, and a very probably narrow scope of focus. Whereas with modding, and what drew me to it is, you can do anything. Like the world is your oyster. You can pick your project, you can pick your game, you can really choose what you want to tackle and how you want to do it. You can be really experiment with the outputs that you want. And so I think as a result of that, we got the battle royale genre. We got co-op sort of shooters. We got weapon loadouts. We got Dota. They're just game genres that came from this. And so whether you're a sound designer, a composer, level designer, I think it's a fantastic platform, and it's super well respected because of the success it's had. So I interact daily with a lot of large AAA studios, and they're constantly saying, hey, have you got any talent you can recommend, and people that you can find from the community and platform that we should be talking to?
I'm a huge Dota fan, so if anyone wants to get into modding, make the next Dota, I'm really into it. So you kind of touched on this, but my next question was going to be, and I'm sure it will just be the answer of anything you want, but what is the scope of modding? Are there areas that it's kind of stronger for learning and weaker for learning, or is it truly just, a basis to learn everything that there is to know about game dev?
I'll jump in quickly, and then I'll let the people who actually are modders answer as well. I've from talking and interacting with a lot of people over the years with this, it does. The beautiful thing is it depends what you really want to achieve. So if you feel really confident, then maybe you'll set out on your own, and you'll pick a project that's got a fairly wide scope. Otherwise, you might just pick a very narrow scope and just replace some sound effects in Skyrim or something like that. But usually what I recommend is trying to find a really strong team and project that's already moving in a direction that you like, and trying to join them, because you can usually be bigger as the sum of multiple parts. But I'll let the others jump in.
Caleb, do you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah. So like you said, it really just depends on like the scope, like how big the project is. And it can be just as simple as replacing sounds for something and then shipping that off. That can take like maybe a week or something. Whereas like a bigger project, it may take years to do. And it's really it is better to join projects. I find if you're sort of starting out, that have a really like they know what they're doing. Like they're not just starting out. They've got a really good idea and they've been moving forward with it for a while now. So you can kind of hop in comfortably and get to know your way around it, and you'll soon like be contributing to that project in a much more smooth fashion. And like there's a lot that you can learn from that, because these people have a lot of talent within their side of stuff. So if you like want to learn from them, you can ask and whatnot. You can get a little bit of knowledge from that and expand your skill set. And like that's very, very helpful, I find.
Those were pretty comprehensive answers, but Tal, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Caleb and Scott, because obviously for me, like, the general limit of what you can do with the mod is generally defined by what you know about the game, what tools you're working with, and how much you know about the engine, like what kind of limitations it's got and how much you can really think to put in there. And it's also always good to join projects, because from there you can maybe find your niche, see what you're best at, see what you're not so good at, and there's always people to help you improve. So do not hesitate to ask for any help at all.
I love that there really does seem to be a strong sense of community within modding, and that sense of, working together towards a common goal that isn't based in your job and having to be there, otherwise you can't buy food. And it seems like a really strong place to make connections and get to work with a passion, I guess. Would you say that is your experience of the community?
Yeah, absolutely. Like so many people are just so passionate about what they're working on, and it's great to see. Like it's motivating to like help them like achieve their goal, like what they started out with. Yeah, like it's great to see. Like it's very passionate, I feel.
There's this really good sense of camaraderie that I wouldn't trade in for the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the original remote workers were modders. We all do it now with Zoom and the pandemic, but mod teams were the most geographically distributed, teams on the planet. Like they've got people speaking different languages from different cultures, with the full gamut of time zones. And I think if you can create and be collaborative, like you're all choosing to be there, and so. As a result of that, there's a lot to learn and pick up and, sort of bounce off one another.
Have you ever encountered any legal issues with developers when modding, and is this a risk at all?
I haven't... Sorry. I was going to say, I haven't personally encountered any issues with developers, but I know it's a very real risk, as we've seen with the modders who have been trying to improve the old ports of Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City and such, and the takedowns they were receiving from Take-Two, even though the games technically were no longer supported, and they were trying to make them playable for a new generation, really.
Yeah, I like Taliesin, I haven't personally experienced that sort of legal issues with any of the projects that I've been a part of, so I'm not sure how to fully comment on that.
Yeah, 20 years of running ModDB, and we do take down some projects from time to time. Grand Theft Auto did occur, but the reality is that most of the industry is sees and embraces and endorses modding in their games, and it really, again, depends on what you're trying to create, and if you're setting out for doing something in sort of compliance with the rules, then you won't run into any problems. But we often see some of the mods that blow up for, say, Skyrim and other titles. It'll be a sound replacement, like Mr. T when the dragon flies in or something like that. And it depends. Like if you want sort of coverage and to get your name out there, maybe that'll work. But you are also a little bit playing with fire.
What are generally the consequences if something does crop up? Is it just a takedown, or are you risking, I guess, longer legal pursuit?
I've never seen. I've never been involved in anything that became anything more than a takedown. And I mean, the reason is that you are an amateur creator. There's really no one wins if there's a battle. So yeah.
Felt like one of our friends online wanted to say something.
I was gonna agree with Scott there. Like, it's a battle that no one can really win, because if you get taken down, it makes the publishers look bad, and if you refuse, it will also make you look bad, like you're fighting against them. So I can't really personally comment on it myself, but I can just give an outsider's view on it, really.
Yeah, I can't really personally comment on that either.
And you have to remember the publisher's position is they generally, whoever's issuing the takedown, almost always it's just because the content doesn't maybe align with what they want their brand to be associated with, or maybe they're working on a commercial endeavor and you just happen to stumble into something and they have to sort of issue the takedown to protect their IP, because if they don't, then by allowing it, they might in effect be sort of endorsing it, and so they really just want it down. Like they don't want anything more. They're not seeking anything more. And I've even seen opportunities come from it where post takedown, it's like, can we have a conversation about this? Can we function? Like what is the compatible way in which we can be compliant? So there can even be opportunities as a result.
And are there games or developers and things like that that are basically the Disney of modding or changing things, that are just, they don't want any of it? If you even try, they'll just be straight in there with the takedown. Ones to avoid, I suppose.
Well, ironically, Disney owns Star Wars, and Star Wars allows fan content within reason. So I think that their reputation's a little bit unfounded. They're not totally. They're very protective, but I wouldn't start there, so to speak. No, I mean, I can't really speak to any that are super, defensive like that.
Caleb and Tal, not aware of any that are ones to avoid?
The only one I could really think of is Nintendo, because they are very, very protective of their brand, because they want it to have a certain image. And if there's anything that kind of breaks that image, then they have to act in a way that kind of retains how they want to look on the outside and how they get viewed to the public.
That's very, very fair. How do people find communities to start off and join projects?
Oh, it's just like for me, it was just being a fan really of Half-Life, and that was something that I've grown up with for a very long time now. And it was just because I have access to the internet, I'm always like looking up Half-Life related things, and I end up coming across communities. And I think one of them was from like Face Punch or something, from Face Punch forums. And I just joined that, and it just kind of branched off from there. And you meet a lot of people through those communities, and it's great networking through that.
It seems like Half-Life is a pretty good game to start with if you're interested. Are there still lots of mods being run on that game, or nah, not really?
Oh my god, there's so many.
It's hard to even count all of them.
Who doesn't love a Half-Life mod?
It's nuts. Just like it's a 20 it's a very old game. Like if we're going back to like Half-Life 1, 1998, there's still projects being made on that engine, or like for a modified engine for that, and it's like Jesus, like it's crazy. It's crazy to see, like, again, just how passionate these people are for like a franchise that they love. Like they would continue working on something like that for 20 years.
Yeah.
There's, Half-Life, Skyrim, and The Sims, and titles like that have incredibly strong modding communities. But there is a whole wide range of modern games now that I would highly encourage people to look at. So if you're playing something and you really love it, just Google it, and chances are there might be a modding scene around it, and there's projects you can potentially join or learn from. So as much as I love Half-Life, and Counter-Strike was the reason why I got into modding, like so many people. And so it's had a big influence on me. Like you said, Dota and others, like that's the Blizzard games and things. There's tons of titles.
I feel as well it's a space where often people are playing a game and they get to a point where they're like, why can't I do this thing? Why doesn't The Sims let me, put an object not perfectly on the grid and move it around a little bit? Because when I try to put that picture up, it's either too high or too low and it looks gross. I want to be able to split the difference. And then they go and they make a mod to fix that problem. And personally, thank you, modding community, for that. I need to make my sim house aesthetic. If you want to contribute music or sound to mods, do you generally need some technical and implementation knowledge?
I would say yes, because if you want to contribute to music, you would probably need to have access to a DAW like FL Studio, GarageBand, Logic, Ableton, any of that kind of things, because they will generally let you control pretty much everything from there.
Yeah, especially if you it definitely helps a lot more as well if you know the engine that you're working with, like how to implement that stuff, like the best way to implement it. It's not just giving like the lead, like the dev lead, like your sound file and then just off with it. Like it is better, I find, to know like how to script, for example, like in like how to put that sound into a script file so that the game can recognize it in a certain way that best suits you. Again, knowing the engine, knowing its limits, it definitely helps as well.
We work with games like Totally Accurate Battle Simulator and titles like that, where they do have in-game editors, but it's very rare that the in-game editors include sound, like the level editors and things. So other titles that we work with, like Deep Rock Galactic at mod.io, tons of sound effects. People seem to want to make dwarves say interesting things. Can't imagine why. But all those mods have been created using external tools, like the studio hasn't provided. So often it is industry standard tools, which is also good because it means that you're learning using what you are through the next stage in your career.
Is working with mods generally unpaid work? Is there any money in it?
It's all generally volunteer work, so if you're expecting some kind of payment, I would probably wait a bit.
Yeah. Like you will find sometimes you do get lucky. Like sometimes there will be someone who's like, I will pay you to do this thing. And it's not a huge amount, but it's still like, it's still money. Like you're still getting paid for something that you would normally volunteer to do for free. And, it is a nice feeling to have someone that appreciates the work that you put in and go that little bit extra with that support for you. And I mean, that can be put towards like more sound related stuff or anything that you enjoy doing, really.
It's I would say it's changing. I mean, we're working on things to sort of help reward creators and do different things, and enabling that with the studios directly. Because we've all sort of seen Roblox, and there's obviously a very large economy around that game, and they're all sort of modders and amateur game creators that are experimenting and seeing success as a result. I would say, generally speaking, I would look at modding as a way of an entry into the industry to learn, to work on interesting projects with interesting people, and to treat it as a pathway. But I mean, over the years, I've worked with some astonishing teams that have had some incredible commercial success. So some of my favourites are not the well-known ones, but like Insurgency and Chivalry, and these are games that I play all the time that went on to sell $50 million plus worth of copies. And I said about Alex Quick and all the titles he's worked on. These people started in modding, and they began as free and volunteers and everything, and then there just so happens that their project became a smash hit. So I would say it's a very strong pathway towards money, but not necessarily the direct one.
What is it like Oh, sorry, you go.
No, I was just agreeing with Scott there, sorry.
What is it like working in teams where, I guess, it doesn't sound like there is any hierarchy necessarily. There's no boss with their single vision who's telling everyone what to do. It's much more collaborative, and everyone's throwing ideas into the mix. How, I guess, do you as a group decide direction and what gets kept and what doesn't?
Now, usually the hierarchy is similar to a general game development team. So you do have like a head of development that usually decides things. But from my experience, there's also a couple of co-leads there that will also be filtered in to help you with any work you're doing and kind of help brief you on what you're supposed to be doing as well.
Oh, so it's much more you get assigned kind of an element of what they want you to do rather than throwing in an idea that you're keen on.
It's not complete chaos.
Yeah.
Is
There's
there
some
a little
organization.
chaos? Is it
You
a
gotta
little
have
bit
a little
chaotic?
chaos.
It's quite, so it
Just a
sounds
little
quite
bit.
structured then.
Like, it's very structured, but there is a little bit of leeway sometimes. Like, with one of the mod teams I work with, sometimes we will change things if we think the idea for it isn't as strong or is something we would prefer to replace, generally.
What makes a game viable for modding? Is it engine dependent?
It really depends on. It's not engine dependent because any game technically is moddable. You've just got to really expose the sort of the functionality that you want to make it moddable. I would say that the games that aren't moddable traditionally are ones where it's really tight narrative and everything's running on a rail, because it's quite hard to sort of change that flow without significantly impacting the game. So usually it is the more open world or sort of experiences where you can change the cosmetics, the sound effects, the levels that tend to be modded more. But there's no real restrictions. And I mean, we always spend a lot of time telling every game studio that we talk to that you should really be looking at modding as a fantastic feature for your title, because player engagement is so important. Diversity of experience and sort of creativity and all of that, and there's nothing better than what modders will attempt. And they're going to attempt things that you'd never thought of. They're going to attempt things that you wish they never thought of. There's a bit of good and bad there, but ultimately the end product can be really amazing outcomes.
I have to agree there, yeah.
Yeah, like if you open up your game to be moddable and stuff, like you'll find that there's a lot of you'll find that there are people within that modding scene that can do something really great, and you might be a game developer, you might see that, and it's like, I kind of want that person because of their like skill set, like they've shown here. Like it's a good demonstration of what people can do with your game, and you might want to like bring them on for your next project or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. We always tell studios, and part of the tech that we're building is to actually help highlight, these are your top creators, these are the kind of interesting content that they're working on, because they actively want to see, hey, can we recruit you, work with you, and do interesting things. So it's a great point.
What are some of the biggest challenges you face day to day that you didn't expect to when you started out, and how do you navigate them? Start with you.
One of the biggest challenges I face is with Source using the Hammer editor in itself, because Like, I love it, but it's very archaic, and it's very prone to crashing, so I have to allocate so many autosaves just to keep all of my work just in one place. And it's still a very like robust game design tool. It's based on, I think, one of the old editors that Quake used. But at the same time, it's showing its age a lot.
I love that answer because it well and truly is a very specific day-to-day issue that would drive you up the wall. What about you, Caleb?
Yeah, like when if I do find myself using the Hammer editor, it is like very risky to use, especially if it's for a project. But for me, generally, it's a challenge for me is making sure that I can get enough free time to allocate to projects that I'm on. Like, it's not just one or two, it's like multiple projects. And it's like, God, like, how do I find all the time to get everything done on all these projects? I mean, that's partly my fault for joining so many, but it can be a challenge to like really just figure out what the best way to go about like the day is, especially when you find that free time to work on mods for other people.
I guess that's another great question as well. Like, how do you find the time? Because it sounds like it can be quite intensive work, and you may get to the point where you don't want to let down the rest of the team that you're working with. How do you kind of slot that into the rest of your life?
Like, I try to just get everything done behind the scenes. Like, it could be just simple house chores, or it could be like personal projects that I'm focused on, or it could be like studies if I'm doing that. It's a lot of trying to really just trying to find the motivation as well to just sit down, spend maybe like 10 minutes just doing this thing real quick so that you can get something in. Because I find when I have a lot of work to do, it's generally a bit harder for me to sit down and work on it because it's so much, and it's like I need to get all of it done, and I generally can't sit down and do a small amount, but I feel like that would be helpful to at least get some progress done generally.
What I found is how did I find the time, and this will probably sound not the best answer, but like I worked a corporate job. I worked at Accenture, and I had 9 to 5 was my hours, like anyone else, and I was literally in that job. I was just designing the bills, the PDF bills for Telstra, and it's a bit soul crushing when you're doing that's your job, like, so for me, I used to just come home, and so it was a passion project, and it was a creative outlet, and website and community creation was something that I really wanted to enable, and just got like a great joy seeing what people were making and sharing and collaborating and working on. So I'd do the 9 to 5 job, and then I'd work. I'd come home and work from 6 to 1 a.m. Pretty much every night for the first 8 years. But I loved it, so it didn't feel like work. That was my outlet. That was my passion. So that's not a solution on finding the time. I guess I just made more time. But yeah.
And do you feel like you've aged an extra 8 years in that 8 years?
I wouldn't change it for the world, because it's ModDB is still visited by 5 million people a month, and they're still making so many projects that I love and play with. I've met heaps of studios, so good outcome for me. And I would hope that a lot of other people's stories would be similar, that have done something crazy like that.
I'm gonna say you don't have to do that.
No, absolutely do not. That's not good advice.
But at the same time, I'm thankful that you did it, because it meant that now we have these great resources for modders. So someone had to.
Thank you.
Just you, apparently. What is the weirdest mod that you've ever seen or made?
Oh God,
That is a tough question.
That's
That
the
is
correct
tough.
answer. Just a slightly full-on.
it's a
oh
trick question.
God.
Like not just made, but like seen. Like
Give me
Like-
both. If you've got a weird one that you've made, I'd love to hear about it. But I'm sure you've seen some things in your time as well.
Too many to list, I think.
yeah, like I can't. Oh god. I think some of the weirdest ones were the more creative ones that I had seen, and I'd somehow indirectly contributed to it because I'd posted something in like a Discord server, and they ended up like asking for it, and I'm like, oh, okay, sure, but it's like, there was a mod, like there was like some weird commentary on the modding scene, or that person's like modding creation and stuff, and there's a lot of weird and wacky stuff and in jokes, and it was funny, but it was also like weird and wacky mod.
That sounds like a very meta mod. A mod about
Yeah.
modders.
Those are pretty fun. Those commentaries about communities.
Some of the more interesting ones that I've liked. One of them I just was blown away by what they'd actually accomplished. So it's not so much that it was wacky, but I think it was Unreal Tournament or something. So it's a really fast-paced 3D shooter, and they'd modded that into a 2D stop-motion paper mache game, and I'm like, why would you
How?
even? No, that's the thing. I don't know how they did it, and I'm like, what is this? This is the most ridiculous. Like, you could picked anything, picked any other engine, any other game,
Right?
and it
I'm
would have
like,
been
there's
so
gotta
much
be
easier.
An easier way to do that. Like,
Yeah. So I was like, what is going on here? And the other one that I really liked, and actually one of the first mods that I played a lot, was this shooter game, and it was basically gun game. And if anyone knows gun game, as you progress through, each time you get a kill, you get a different weapon. But the way that they design it is that each time you got like 5 kills, your weapon upgraded, so you got better and better weapons. So it was the most unbalanced game in the history of gaming, because the people who were good got to like machine guns, and you're still running around with a pistol. But that's just what modders do. They just make things that are just not fun, but then people love them, and they just do different things.
and do you have one, Tal?
For me, right now, the weirdest mod I've seen is one of the most recent ones for God of War that turns Kratos into Homer Simpson,
Yes, I have seen
Complete-
that one.
complete with newly voiced dialogue as well.
And didn't they also turn the first like main enemy into Ned Flanders?
They did.
It's
And
very
it's so
good stuff.
great.
If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go and look it up, because it really brings a new element to the game that I think is going to change how I see Ragnarok when it comes out. Yeah.
I can't even look at the game in the same way anymore, just because of how much is in here.
You're like trying to engage with this emotional story about a father and his son, and then you're just like, Homer Simpson beating up Ned Flanders.
Donuts. I literally can't look at it the same way again.
What are some common mistakes you've made or you've seen people starting out to make?
Oh,
I would say overscoping, being too ambitious. Like if you're just starting out and you're like, I want a 12-hour long game at the length of the main game, but also its side games, and it's like, and they're the only person working on it, and they've got little to no experience. It's like, you really should start out with something smaller.
Just start out with a small game where each time you get a kill, your weapon gets upgraded.
Fantastic
Yeah,
idea.
it's great.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, like it just has to be something that you can. It should show progression, like just how good and like just how much more you're improving as a mod developer and potentially game developer.
Yeah, that's great advice. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Like if you're treating it as a avenue in and a place to learn, start with something simple, ship it, and then get that, that endorphin, that rush, and from seeing people play it and comment on it. And maybe the comments might not be that positive because it's your first experience, so the internet is not always a place you should read comments on. But learn from it, and keep involving your craft, and go to more complex projects, as Caleb said.
Yeah, like it's definitely good getting community feedback from that. Like multiple projects, you'll get more feedback and you'll get more improvement than if you were to do one big one that hasn't released. Right?
Is that why you're on 10 teams? So you can get lots of feedback?
You're not allowed to call him out for working too much. You've already exposed yourself. How in demand is specifically sound design services in the modding community? Do they often use the game's resources, or do they require custom sounds?
It's a bit of both.
Yeah.
Because sometimes games will reappropriate existing sounds, but sometimes you will get the kind of situation where you are going to need some new sounds that the in-game audio just doesn't fit at all.
Is it widely regarded as like quite acceptable for someone to approach a project that's going ahead and they don't have a sound designer and kind of put your hand up and say, hey, I'd be interested in doing some work on this project?
I mean, that's how I started, so...
So if it's not acceptable, you don't want to hear about it. You don't want to know.
I mean, it depends on the size of the team. Like, there might not be a dedicated sound designer, but I think most teams will usually cross that bridge when they get to that, when they're really starting out. Like, when they run into like the kind of situation where they need someone dedicated to like making these brilliant, crisp sounds to their video games, and they just can't rely on stock sound or stuff that's been already ingrained in the game's files.
Yeah, there's 3 pathways in. You can either find a project that's advertising and wants someone, and like on ModDB, for example, there's a help wanted section where studios, you can easily see if people have said, hey, we want a sound person to join our project, and you can respond and see if that works. You can offer to assist. If you're going to offer to assist, then I always say, try to share examples and reasons why, like, you should be joining that team and project. Like, you've got a passion and knowledge for what they're doing, and here's some things that you've done that might be relevant and applicable, if you have that. And then the third one is just with modding, you could just start your own project if you're feeling confident. So there are 3 pathways in, which is kind of neat.
Are paid mods, of which it sounded like there's not necessarily a lot, a good way to get some income when you're starting out in the games industry?
It's a tough question to ask, but I would probably say maybe.
A strong maybe.
A very strong maybe, because it depends on what kind of mod it is, how many original assets you have in the mod, how many you can still use that are from the original game that you've licensed out.
Yeah, the big players in the industry are trying to change the word mod into metaverse, and I don't know why, but at every studio that's got these metaverse aspirations, they do see it as a platform for creation and commercialization. And I think that some of them are going to succeed. So right now, today, it's probably not. There are people making a lot of money creating content for Dota and games like that have been certified by Valve and other studios like Minecraft, Dota, Flight Sim, Roblox, and there's going to be so many more. In 5 years' time, there will be I think a lot of opportunity in this space, because studios succeed these days through player engagement and content, and in so many cases, the best content is made by their community. So they're starting to recognise that, and the tools and systems are starting to emerge that they can create something that the players want because they get more interesting content, and the studios want because it's better for their success, and then it's good for the creators. So I would say it's not quite here yet, but there's a gradual shift, and I think over a multi-year period we will see a large change.
And
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, go. Sorry.
Sorry, just saying, agreeing.
I like all the agreements. It's been very nice.
It's very affirming. It's good. Is modding generally unregulated in terms of content that's utilized? For example, copyrighted sounds, uncredited work. Are there any unethical concepts?
Oh, very. But it always depends on the kind of mod you're working with as well.
I guess when there's so many and anyone can start a project, it's really difficult because there are going to be some that may use copyrighted material, but they're so small they fly under the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so many of them, you can't really keep track of them all.
Yeah, like that's your choice though, right? Like if you're creating a mod for a game and you want to make Homer Simpson, bring Homer Simpson in the world, and that's something that you're doing for fun and for whatever reason. Like you don't have to choose that type of content. You can make your own effects and bring them in.
And our last question, how would you go about showing the work you've done in mods on a resume or in a portfolio?
For me, the best way of showing off my work has been through recording footage of the game, taking screenshots, and placing it into my portfolio website on Wix. It's not the best method or the recommended one, but it's generally the one that's worked the best for me.
Yeah, for me, I'm very disorganized when it comes to all my work. So I'll usually, if someone's asking, it's like, all right, let me take 5 minutes to find this certain thing or whatever, instead of going to maybe a website where I should be putting my work. But I mean, it generally works for me personally. That's been acceptable to people, just as long as they get to see the work that I do for other projects or have done for personal projects. That's enough for them. Generally.
Yeah, there's no right way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know we're out of time here, but I will add, I think that is the single probably best thing about modding for those that want to break into the industry. It is such a powerful thing to add to your resume and show to a game studio, because there's not a game studio on the planet that doesn't know about modding and doesn't respect it, because it shows that, one, you're self-motivated because you've opted in to do it. Two, it shows that you also can learn, because often as a modder you have to figure things out. You don't necessarily have strong guidance. And so the best thing you can do is put it on and then just list examples. Ideally, there's a profile for that mod on ModDB or Nexus Mods or Workshop or Mod.io or whatever site it might be that you can point to. It's like, this is a ship project. They don't even necessarily have to play it, but you could say, hey, I contributed and created this. I think it's an insanely strong thing, and studios massively respect it.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Scott, Caleb, and Tal.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.